You're listening to A Radio.
Thank you for joining us. You're listening to A Radio, and this is The Morning Moment. Follow us on Spreaker.com and click on the like button. You can find us on most social media platforms such as iTunes, Spotify and iHeartRadio. Go to our website, aradio.wordpress.com, for details, where you'll find more content and details on our podcasts and more. Tearing down statues in America and other places, what's the point? Where does it get you? What's the goal? Well, many would say that those who have been brainwashed in these countries have moved on. I ask, to where and why? Some famous person once said, those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. I think that might well be true. If you tear down your history just because you don't like it, that doesn't change your history. It just means you're in denial of your history. Isn't it better to celebrate where you've come from rather than deny its very existence? Examine, for instance, the country of Canada, where you are no longer allowed to use certain words. Now, I know that's true in other countries, but you can no longer act in a certain way here either. And more to that point, you are required to accept a new normal in behaviour of some of your fellow citizens, whether you like it or not. Such as in any small town in Canada, you may well be presented with for instance, a gay pride parade, where people, shall we say, are walking down the street with all to see. Do you want your young children to be brought up in that environment? This is just one example of what I consider is quite honestly, the perverted left ideology driven by the communist Justin Trudeau, who in my mind is systematically dismantling all semblance of decency and order in this country of Canada. He is a disgrace to Canada, and the damage he and his radical left party has unleashed on this country could be irreparable, and that's their goal. At the same time, your actions in Canada are being restricted. Your free speech is being restricted. Your movement across internal borders is prohibited. Yet millions are unable to work, yet being paid to do nothing. When you stop and analyse, all of our freedoms are being taken away from us, drip by drip. That's just one example of one country, but this is happening in many countries all over the world at the same time that their free movement is either being heavily restricted or in some cases absolutely prohibited. Why is that? We hear aircraft that are taking off and landing from your country and mine to foreign destinations. Strange, don't you think? Some people can move around while others are prohibited from doing so. Why is it that people think that A, they have the right to take down statues that were placed there by the people, and B, what do you think that will achieve? All it will achieve in my mind is anger from ordinary people. Here's something that African Americans, for instance, conveniently seem to forget, or maybe they don't know, which I find even harder to believe. In the United States, they have what's called affirmative action, where, putting it simply, they don't have to achieve the same academic grades as the majority of Americans to qualify for a university education. That is, in my mind, not having a level playing field at all. However you slice it, they have preferential treatment for places available. Yet another example. Yet that's not good enough, and on it goes. Yet anyone expressing this view is considered to be a racist for pointing out that there's an imbalance against the majority of that country. We have the same issues in Canada from native Indians who don't pay any tax, yet moan about everything under the sun. They choose to live where they live. But to be totally fair, they have a lot of problems with water and sanitation. But there's zero accountability for the billions of dollars pumped into their communities. No one knows where the money goes, but go it does. Yet, like socialised medicine in Canada, there's never enough money. The common denominator to me is socialists and socialism, and in the USA, the Democrats, who for nearly 100 years have sought to keep groups of people socially dependent upon them. This breeds nothing but poverty, corruption, and, yes, despair. I want to give you a quote from George Orwell, which I think is quite relevant, bearing in mind the destruction that's going on all over the world at the moment. Quote, "Every record has been destroyed or falsified, every book rewritten, every picture has been repainted, every statue and every street building has been renamed, every date has been altered, and the process is continuing day by day and minute by minute. History has stopped. Nothing exists except an endless present in which the party is always right." Unquote. The same applies to the Nazis in 1933 in Germany. The Nazis set about destroying all books and literature that they didn't like.
There was to be a cultural revolution too. German culture would be purged of the Jewish Bolshevist taint. The books flew into the fire. Many of those who flung them were students and teachers. And as the sparks rose, the intellectuals fled, writers and scientists, to give their talents to Western Europe and America. 100 years before, the German Jewish poet Heine, whose books now went into the fire, had warned, "Where one burns books, there one eventually burns people."
If you start taking down signs, renaming buildings, continue on denying citizens free speech, at the same time allowing certain groups to act beyond the law, what are you left with? Long before the riots in the US, that spread like a virus all over the world, unfortunate term I know, in Canada, our communist leader, who at the time was on another one of his 6-month winter breaks outside of Canada, because it's cold in Canada in the winter, despite his claims to the contrary, was caught in another national scandal. This was one of his own making. Terrorists acted and took over the National Rail Network earlier on this year. If you and I had attempted to do this, what these folks actually did, we would have been arrested. But because they are native Indians, or as Trudeau likes to call them, indigenous groups, nothing was done. For weeks, the situation was stalemate. Trudeau was forced to return from one of his 6-month-week break and procrastinated 4 weeks, while parts of the country were starved of essential services. This situation was exacerbated by a leader in name only who was and is weak and immature and dangerous, bowing down to what I consider to be terrorists and terrorist acts. They should have been arrested, charged the same day, but his political PC views come before the nation. So when you see riots around the world and you wonder what it would have been like without your current leader, look at Canada for clues. Communists talk the talk, all right, but when it comes to action against their groups, forget it. If someone commits an illegal act, such as blocking a rail link, they should be arrested and prosecuted, regardless of who they are. This is what you get when you put politics before the law that ordinary people have to follow. Finally, as far as Canada is concerned, when Trudeau has achieved his goal and removed all guns from Canada, there will still be guns in Canada. They will belong to gangs that Liberals have let thrive for decades. And, oh yes, politicians and their security forces protecting them. But not you. You can't have a gun, but it's vital they do. And that's my comment. You can find more at aradio.wordpress.com, where you can find links to us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Gab, Spotify, and email. We're on Spotify under the podcast section. Type in Canadian Politics with a twist and you'll find us. We are continuing to reach out to you, so please pass these links on to your friends. Please click on the follow button on Spreaker.com. You can listen to all our morning moments at Spreaker.com/A-Radio, EHRADIO, A-Radio. And please click on the like button. Join us Monday, Wednesday and Friday at 11:45 Eastern, and tell your friends and pass the word. We only tell the truth, not what the mainstream media want you to know.